Could you tell us a little bit about what your current role is at the moment, please?
Sure. So I work as an advanced orthotic practitioner, primarily in foot and ankle orthopedics. But the advanced practice role encompasses more than just the clinical side. So I also have a role as our MSK team lead for the team in the orthotic team in NHS GGC. So my clinical role involves working for triaging in orthopedics. So I work alongside one of the orthopedic consultants. In fact, I work alongside now 3 of the orthopedic consultants. And basically it's any patients that are referred into orthopedics, usually for a surgical opinion. So we'll then assess, diagnose, treat, or list them for surgery, do a bit of post-operative work in orthopedics as well. And then in the orthotics side, as I say, I work as the MSK team lead for our own in-house team. And I do escalation clinics alongside other members of our staff. So any patients that maybe haven't been responding to standard care can be escalated up to that service, and I'll see them alongside. So a kind of training opportunity for other members in our team as well. So I started my career as an orthotist. I knew when I was on my placements that I preferred working in orthotics. I really enjoyed my prosthetics placement, but I think that orthotics was where my heart was. So when I graduated, I had 2 job offers. One of them was a permanent job, which would have involved me having to relocate. And one of them was a temporary job in NHS GGC. And I knew that that's where I wanted to work. So I took the risk and I took the temporary job. And I say that because a lot of people ask me, particularly students and new graduates, they ask me about, well, I've been offered a permanent job, should I just take the permanent job? And I think that sometimes it's worth taking the risk on a temporary job if you think that that's where you want to be. It might not always work out. It worked out very well for me. So for the first couple of years, I worked on different temporary contracts within GGC and eventually got my permanent full-time post. So it was around about that time that I started looking at different speciality areas. And as with most of us, you know what it's like in orthotics. We're often small teams. You maybe don't have a choice about what you specialise in. And at that time, I was working in diabetes and working in the diabetes clinics. So I tend to throw myself into things. If I'm enjoying something, I'll enjoy it even more if I know all that I can possibly know about it. So I've worked in those clinics. I spent a lot of time shadowing the consultants, which meant that I would end up maybe working later in the day because I'd be shadowing the consultants and then have to go and do my own notes and things like that. And I then went on to do my master's in diabetes because I was just really, really enjoying that pathway. At around the time that I got into the second year of my master's, I felt like I had maybe reached as far as I could go in the diabetes side of things. Unless you're able to independently prescribe like the podiatrists, which we're not, then there's not really a lot further that you can go in that side of things. That's why the podiatrists tend to get the advanced practice jobs in diabetes. So at that time, I was had my eye on maybe looking at other areas of specialist practice, and it was at that time that the opportunity arose to become a trainer on what is now known as the BAPO MSK course. So once I started down that path, that was quite a steep learning curve of really getting in depth in MSK foot and ankle specifically. Probably had been working as a trainer on the MSK course for about a year and a half, I think, when serendipity came to play, and we actually took over one of the services in NHS Glasgow that we hadn't worked in before. It had always been a contracted service. We brought that in-house, so it was a hospital that I hadn't worked in before. And I was brought in to sort of set the playing field for that hospital and just get the clinics up and running. And I can remember it really clearly, myself and my manager at that time, who was Nikki. We went to say hello to the orthopedic team. So we knew that the foot and ankle consultant had a clinic that day. We knocked on his door and just introduced ourselves as the orthotists that were now in service. And he was really welcoming. He said, "Oh, it's great. I've not actually met an orthotist in this hospital before. If you ever want to come and shadow the clinic, feel free." And Nikki, bless her, sort of pushed me through the door and said, well, Laura's really interested in that and she's not doing anything just now. So he was happy to have me come and shadow him that day. And then that set up a wee bit of a kind of running shadowing session that I used to, wherever I was possibly free or available. If he had a clinic, I would go and shadow him. Unbeknownst to me at that time, one of the extended scope podiatrists had handed in their notice and the board were struggling to fill that job. And of course, there was me sitting in this clinic every week, waxing lyrical to the consultant about how much I love working in foot and ankle. So he started sort of interviewing me in those clinics. He would pull up x-rays, he'd ask me to interpret the x-rays, he would ask me what surgical procedures we could do for this patient. He started me seeing his patients while we were in clinic together. And eventually he said, look, this job has come up, would you be interested? And that was how I ended up working in the extended scope side of orthopedics, which has now evolved into advanced practice.